Hey folks, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about CloudFormation update policies. Let's take a look at the DevOps doctrine and click on Update Policies. Now, I want to be clear, there are three types of update policies: auto-scaling replacing update, auto-scaling rolling update, and auto-scaling scheduled action. And we will be touching on all of these, but this diagram is specific to the auto-scaling replacing update. We will look at the code for all three of them, and we also have a learning activity for auto-scaling rolling updates. So in the big picture, we need to be able to push our updates as smoothly as possible, preferably with minimum downtime. So those are the questions. How can we update instances through auto-scaling groups with minimal downtime? How can we update auto-scaling group launch configurations and have those changes update all instances under the auto-scaling group? Now, we can't directly, we've talked about this before, we can't directly update auto-scaling launch configurations, but there are techniques where the end result is a new launch configuration with the updates that we need. One other thing about launch configurations: when we institute an updated launch configuration, it does not affect the existing instances. It only affects the instances that are going to be launched from that point on. So there has to be a way to cycle in these new instances, and in most cases, replacing the old instances from a previous launch configuration. This all brings us to the CloudFormation update policy attribute. And this attribute, as we'll see, we'll be looking at a lot of code, can be associated with an auto-scaling group resource in CloudFormation. This update policy will handle updates to that resource and its instances. So using the update policy, we can describe how instances and auto-scaling groups are updated depending on the policy that we configure. And with the update policy, we have three options: auto-scaling replacing update, auto-scaling rolling update, and auto-scaling scheduled action. Now, the first two, auto-scaling replacing update and auto-scaling rolling update, apply when we make changes to the launch configuration, to the auto-scaling group's VPC zone identifier property, basically the subnets, and when updating an auto-scaling group that has instances which don't match the current launch configuration. Now, the auto-scaling scheduled action applies when we update a stack that includes an auto-scaling group with an associated scheduled action. So let's first talk about the auto-scaling replacing update policy. And let's look at the diagram first, because we're going to switch to our code editor. So let's look at our diagram. So let's say that our auto-scaling group is a group of T2 micro instances, and we decide we want to upgrade to T2 small. Now, key difference between auto-scaling replacing update and the rolling update will replace one instance at a time. The auto-scaling replacing update is actually going to create a second auto-scaling group. So for a brief time, there will be two auto-scaling groups, and then it's going to create the instances within this second auto group. So then and only then, when our second auto-scaling group is up and the instances are ready, the original auto-scaling group will then be deleted. So that is the key difference. Beyond that, we're talking about techniques that we've seen before. So this new auto-scaling group with CFN signal is going to send success signals back to CloudFormation. And note, this also has a creation policy. So once that second auto-scaling group and the instances are created, CloudFormation will be given the update that the update is complete. This first auto-scaling group will be deleted. So I'm going to switch my split screen and we'll look at some code. This is a CloudFormation template, and note it's in YAML format, demonstrating an update policy. Couple key points. We're using T2 micro and T2 small. Some of our parameters, we're taking a key pair and also min and max instances in our auto scaling group, and an image ID for the EC2 instances, creating a VPC, public subnet, route table. Here is our auto scaling group, and we're referencing a launch configuration. And within our auto scaling group resource, we have an update policy and a creation policy. So it's simply 2 lines of code. Auto scaling replacing update will replace equal true. So referencing back to our diagram, this is indicating that if there is an update, we want to completely replace the original auto scaling group. Now, very key point about this. During an update, CloudFormation will keep the old auto scaling group until the new one is created. This will allow for a rollback if the update fails. We set this will replace to true, means we are creating a new auto scaling group, and that is where the creation policy comes into play. And note that our timeout is set to 5 minutes. Now for this situation, our count is the instance count. So however many number of instances we have in our auto scaling group, when we update, we're looking for that number of success signals. Let's see this in action. So the auto scaling replacing update is going to be the demo portion of this lesson. So let's go over to CloudFormation and let's click Design Template. Make sure we're on the Template tab and paste in this template. I always like to do a separate validation, although if you just go to Create Stack, it will validate as well. So let's create the stack. Click Next. All right. Name our stack. Let's make our instance count 2, and we'll leave the max at 6. Let's open a new tab and go over to EC2, click Launch Instance, and right there we can grab our image ID, and we'll just keep this second tab up. It will come in handy. All right, so we're going to start out with T2 micro, and I'll just use an existing key pair. Click Next, Next through Options, and Create. And refresh, and we'll see our new stack. And click on it, and we'll just keep an eye on the progress. All right, so our stack creation is complete. And note, we got 2 success signals for our 2 instances. Let's just bounce over to EC2, and we have 2 T2 micro instances. Let's say that we want to upgrade these T2 micro instances. And let's say that we had a large number of these instances, maybe 10 or maybe 10 or 12. And we feel like the rolling update is going to take too long for us. So it's a trade-off. So we will do the replacing update, and the trade-off is maybe we'll have a little bit of downtime, but the update overall will be faster than a rolling update. All right, so we have our stack highlighted. Let's click Actions and let's click Update Stack. And let's use the current template. We could use a different template and just upload it, but we'll use the current template. Click Next. All right, let's keep all of this the same, except we want to go to T2 small. Let's click Next, Next through Options. All right, it's computing the changes. So we're going to have a different launch configuration. Replacement is true. And auto scaling group. Replacement is conditional. Why would that be conditional? Well, it's conditional upon receiving that requisite number of success signals. If we get that, So then it will go forward with the auto-scaling group. If not, then there's a rollback and the original will still be intact. So let's click Update. And we'll keep an eye on this progress. Let's keep an eye on our instances. Yeah, I'm going to have a third tab just for quickness. Our T2 micros are still in place, but we are building our T2 smalls. Now let's bounce over to our auto-scaling groups. And this is really the key to it. So right now, there are 2 auto-scaling groups in play. And if and only if we get those success signals back, will our original auto-scaling group be deleted. Let's bounce back to our stack. All right, we're in pretty good shape. Update in progress. Note we have an updated launch configuration. Let's check out our instances. We have 2 T2 smalls running. And here's the key. Our T2 micros are still running. So it's not swapping them out one at a time like a rolling update. We still have 2 auto-scaling groups. Update complete. Delete in progress. Note, it's deleting our original auto-scaling group. So instances may be in the process of launching or terminating. In this case, they are terminating. Bang, right there we go. So our T2 smalls are in place. Our T2 micros are shutting down. And our original auto-scaling group is on its way out. So our T2 micros have been terminated. Our T2 smalls are running. There goes our original auto-scaling group. So that is an auto-scaling replacing update in action. And again, the difference to the rolling updates is the rolling update would deal with generally 1 instance at a time. You can set different numbers, but it's not going to deal with all of the instances at once. Once that original auto-scaling group and the original launch configuration are deleted, our status can then become update complete, all contingent upon these success signals being sent back to CloudFormation. If we didn't get these, we got a failure or a timeout, then everything rolls back and our original auto-scaling group is fine. All right, so let's talk about auto-scaling rolling updates. And there's also an in-depth learning activity on auto-scaling rolling updates. So this policy gives us control over how many instances in our auto-scaling group get updated at the same time. Could be 1 or 2 or whatever number you want to set. We can also control how many instances at a minimum should be running during an update. So the key point is that you're always going to have an instance running. You're not going to have downtime. So this policy gives a little bit more of control over how many instances are updated at once, and it's going to eliminate or limit downtime. If we run into an issue with the update, there's an automatic rollback to the previous version. All right, so this template's in JSON format. Here's our auto-scaling rolling update. We have a max batch size, minimum number of instances in service. That can eliminate downtime. The max batch size is the number of instances that can be updated at a given time. We could also have another parameter in here, min successful instances %. And that's the percentage of instances that need to signal success for an update to succeed. And we could also have a pause time, amount of time that CloudFormation pauses after making a change to a batch of instances. This is helpful for bootstrapping. Okay, so we have an auto-scaling group with a minimum size of 2 and a maximum size of 4. Using the same scenario, if we're going to upgrade from T2 micro to T2 small, this will be a little bit different. We will keep 1 instance in service at all times. So that's where it differs from our auto-scaling replacing updates, and that's where the terminology rolling update comes into place. So that 1 instance is going to be kept with the current configuration, T2 micro. The other instances are going to be updated. And only when those other instances are in service will this final instance be updated. And just to be clear, it's not updating that specific instance. It's going to be replaced. The T2 micro instance will be replaced with a new T2 small instance. And again, there's a detailed learning activity coming up on rolling updates. Now, let's talk about autoscaling scheduled actions. So scheduled actions can be used with predictable load patterns. So if our autoscaling group has an associated scheduled action, and let's take a look at our code here, we can use this policy to handle updates for min size, max size, and desired capacity. So this is just a code snippet, but our autoscaling scheduled action would be within an update policy. So with the scheduled action, we have the scheduled action up and the scheduled action down. So of course, we're referencing our autoscaling group. So max size of 10, min size of 5, recurrence, and this indicates 7 a.m. So the scheduled action is good if you have predictable traffic patterns. Let's say you want to scale up every day at 7 a.m. Now note the scheduled action down, 019, so in the military time, 1900, that is 7 p.m. So every day at 7 a.m., scale up. Every day at 7 p.m., you can scale down. And in this case, scale down to 1 instance. Obviously, there's a wide difference in traffic patterns in the 7 a.m. and all day to 7 p.m. and overnight. So that's a look at the update policy and its 3 types: the autoscaling group scheduled action, the rolling updates, and the autoscaling replacing updates. Now, it's always good when thinking about the DevOps Pro certification exam to think in terms of use cases. So if you need to update your autoscaling group, let's say you need to update to bigger instances, but you don't want any downtime, what's your best option? Well, that would be the autoscaling rolling update. What if you have a large number of instances, 10 or 12, and you need the update to occur fast? Then you think about the autoscaling replacing update. That will go off faster than the rolling update. And if you have predictable traffic patterns, high traffic in the day, low traffic overnight, then you want to be thinking about the autoscaling scheduled action. And with that, we have completed this lesson on autoscaling update policy. Go ahead and mark it complete, and let's move on to the next.